returns in Big Bear, Joshua Tree, or some of those areas?
Yeah, Big Bear is not really short-term rental friendly. You got to meet the guest in person. And there's a lot of different laws that you have to, there's just too much regulation there. I'm not saying that you can't, what's it called?
In
Make money
Big
there.
Bear, Joshua Tree, or some of those areas.
Yeah, and then Joshua Tree, the return is definitely there, but I do a lot of things based on like taxes, and I like to buy a little bit more expensive and luxurious cabins or short-term rentals, so that way I could do my cost segregation analysis and do like a massive, year one depreciation. And the thing that I worry about Joshua Tree is the fact that it's boomed so much within the last 2 years, 3 years, especially the last year with different investors doing short-term rentals. It was already difficult to find the quality cleaners to begin with. I can't imagine what it's like now. And, in the end, it is a people's game. You're so reliant on your cleaners, and I treat them like gold. That's why my cleaners love working for me. I give them Christmas bonuses. I'm going to give them a summer bonus here, and I'm really nice to them. They love working for me. So I think I'd have a hard time here in Joshua Tree. And the thing is, like I said, I have a formula that's working, so I don't know why I should change it.
Well, very, very good. Appreciate it. For those who want to end up being like Alex and learn more from him, he's actually put his information in the chat. Reach out to him. He'll be more than happy to speak with you. We're going to go ahead and get this ball rolling. So without any further ado, I'm going to give you Mr. Ryan Raven, which is my business partner. So Ryan, step up to the plate, share your information, and get your presentation going.
Thank you for the introduction, Thomas. I appreciate it. Hopefully I won't be too boring for you guys.
Oh, hold that thought. Hold that thought.
Okay.
Okay. For those who are not supposed to be here and might get in trouble, I'm letting you know we're recording this on Zoom as well as YouTube live right now. So if you don't want to be seen, go ahead, Lee. I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Ryan.
You're not supposed to be here. Don't be here. I'm glad you're here. My name is Ryan Raven. I'm from Riverside. I basically grew up in Riverside, lived here most of my life. And I started in the business when I was 18. I was a troubled teenager that was very rambunctious, very rebellious. And I dropped out of high school, and right when I was about 17 and a half, I dropped out of high school, and because it was boring to me. I was a good student if I enjoyed the subject, if I enjoyed the teacher, but if I didn't, I was a D and F student and very disruptive. And my dad, kind of pulled me into this business as a way to try and straighten me out, I guess. And I started out with going to some seminars and going, learning a little bit about the business, and started out doing hard money lending. My dad had a credit line at the bank. He would borrow at about somewhere between 7 and 8%. And we'd lend that money out at 18%, 18 points. And we also bought and sold notes. So we would, we took a Jimmy Napier class and started marketing for seller carryback financing, mostly in the southeast area, and would sell those notes to various investors, but mostly we would sell to some insurance companies that were in Orange County, and I would close them and package them up and drive them down to Orange County and pick up a check and bring it back. And that was kind of how I got started in this. And eventually I transitioned into doing more conventional financing. My dad wound up moving from Riverside. He had some bad deals that he invested in, and kind of bankrupted him. And he moved back east. I stuck around and stayed in the business and worked for some mortgage companies and some banks and subprime companies and things like that, and progressed throughout my life with doing real estate for about the last 30 years. I'm 50 now and just turned 50 this month. Never thought I'd make it based on when I was a young person, as rowdy and careless and reckless as I could be. And I enjoyed real estate primarily because of the income potential I had. I had a few jobs. I started working for my grandfather when I was 6 years old at his Hallmark store, ringing up customers at and being a cashier and doing things like that. I worked at a record store when I was a teenager. I always had a job when I was a teenager. It always kept me busy. I always put money in my pocket. I was always able to go to concerts and hang out with friends, and I always had, the vehicle and all of that stuff. So I kind of became accustomed to, wanting to earn and make money for myself so I could be more financially independent and not have to go to my parents all the time for money and, things like that. So when I started seeing some of the income potential, kind of attracted me and got me more involved in it. And, and I kind of never looked back, so to speak. And one of the things, that I learned throughout these years is that, if you're on the fence and you're just thinking about it, just do it. It's better to just get in and fail and learn from that failure and move on and figure out what it was that, was the problem and correct those things and try not to do it again. And the most important thing that I was doing it. I've had hard times, I've had good times, this business is all about resiliency and perseverance and just moving ahead, even when it felt really hard to do. I've about 3 or 4 years ago, I started to attend the Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club because even though I had learned a lot of the investment stuff and gone to a lot of the old school, investment meetings and seminars and things like that, back then when I was 18 and going to Florida or the East Coast to do some of these seminars, and they'd say, oh, here's how to do these things, with creative financing and no money down and all of these things. I moved back, and even me as somebody whose dad was doing these things, was very skeptical. So, if you're skeptical, I totally get it. But, if you work hard, you pay attention, these things really are real. I always kind of have that skeptical kind of viewpoint of, yeah, it works over there on the East Coast, but it doesn't work here in Southern California. And, and I kind of had that mindset for a few decades, especially being in a conventional type, real estate world, so to speak. And what I've learned over the last 3 years is that had I done this when I was, 20, 18, early age, I would probably be much better off, at least financially. And if I had worked hard at and tried to figure it out and failed a few times, I probably would have been, able to figure it out and done this, over the last, 33 decades that I didn't do it. About 3 years ago, I started attending the meetings and coming around and getting to know people. And eventually I was starting to get a little burnt out working for a large bank, doing mortgage lending. And I had an opportunity where one of the club founders, approached me and, and said, hey, if you find a deal, I'll fund it and we'll split the profits 50-50. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. Didn't quite believe him, but, I was like, okay, well, maybe. And then a few months later, I see an ad in the paper about, a position that was available, and I responded to it. And, it happened to be him. And we got together, we talked a little bit, and I, discussed it with my wife and took him up on his opportunity to basically, take over his mortgage company, his hard money lending. And being the background that I had, I felt that, I could probably do something like that. And, I probably would enjoy it because at that point, my focus was, when I'm getting older, and I don't have a really good retirement, and, I have a family and I want to take care of them. And, I know that my earnings potential is, probably at its peak, or maybe a little past its prime for most folks, and so I thought, I need to start doing something and actually taking action on this quote unquote investing thing. And I took advantage of the opportunity after my wife and I talked, and I quit the large bank and went to work over doing hard money and relearning what programs and things and what the intricacies of hard money lending are, and I'm extremely happy that I did, because since that time I've accomplished some of the goals that I set for myself for going out and flipping properties. And my previous partner, we were together doing loans off and on for almost 20 years, and through half of that, I always kept saying, we need to flip a house. We need to flip a house. But I didn't take the action. And it never happened. And then all of a sudden, through kind of within this network of people and really getting myself immersed in the investment world through being a hard money lender and working with investors on a regular basis, opportunities started to pop up all around me. And that's one of the things that I found throughout my career, that if you're fully immersed and you really put yourself out there, things happen to kind of come along when you least expect it. And all of a sudden, that I want to do something turns into I'm about to, and then it turns into I did. And lo and behold, I wound up coming across a property that a friend of mine that I went to high school with, who's a real estate agent, was having a hard time with a property that he had listed that fell out of escrow. And he called me up because, I had mentioned to him through Facebook and things like that, what I was doing, and that I was a hard money lender, and that I was wanting to buy a property and flip it and this and that. So he calls me up and says, I've got a deal in Hemet. And my first deal, I went, okay, well, let me look at the numbers. I looked at the numbers, they made sense. And I you know, submitted my offer. He accepted it, and we got into escrow and closed. And you know, I my partner, you know, said, "Hey, you find the deal, we'll fund it." And I said, "Well, is this still the case?" He said, "Of course, let's go raise the money." And so he walked me through the process of raising the capital for this property. And with no money out of my pocket, we wound up buying that property. I managed the entire process, including getting rid of squatters. I mean, the first deal was kind of a good learning experience for me, because when I bought the property, the tenants were presented as people that were staying in the property and fixing the property up slowly in exchange for rent. And you know, I went into this thinking that was the case, and it wasn't. They were in cahoots with the seller, didn't have any rental contracts, were subletting 8 trailers in the backyard to people, and selling meth and terrorizing the neighbors and destroying the house, and you know, all of these things. And you know, I had to go about the process of evicting them, and with the background that I had, I knew there were things I couldn't do, there were things I couldn't say, you know, and you know, it wasn't like I could just call up some friends and you know, have them boot these people out, you know, and expect to not have some consequences of that. So instead, I went through the proper channels. I got them evicted. It took a little while, longer than I would have liked to, but eventually we got them out. And luckily we had a really good construction crew behind us, and they went in and did a fantastic job. And you know, next thing you know, I'm making $40,000 on my first flip, and I'm like, oh, this is great. And you know, it was a great experience. And you know, while I'm in that process, other opportunities are starting to happen. And you know, so I started joint venturing with people and helping them raise capital. And next thing you know, I'm 12 properties later, and you know, I've got, you know, several flips, you know, in different stages of, you know, work and completion going on right now. And the more I'm doing this, the easier it's getting. You know, the first one was kind of difficult and didn't happen in the time frame I'd like. But luckily we had a good market going on, and we still made the same amount of profit, even though we had a little more closing costs involved because of the hold time and things like that. And each one has had its own challenges, learning experiences, problems to have to solve. And you know, that's one of the things that I find, you know, that it keeps me involved in it and excited about doing it, because I like to solve problems. I feel good once a problem has been solved. I don't mind hitting my head. I do that on a regular basis, and I make mistakes. And you know, I learn that, you know, if I do that, I'm going to bump my head again, and it's going to hurt. So I try not to do it again. Not that I succeed every single time, but you know, more often than not, you know, once I've hit my head a couple of times, I learn not to hit my head again. And you know, and getting the right people involved, and having the partners that I've had in the past have helped push me along and kind of make me do things that maybe I might have been uncomfortable with it to begin with, but once I got through it, it's refreshing. And you know, it wasn't as hard as I really thought it was going to be. And you know, this industry, you know, I have a short attention span. I I lose interest. I get a lot of interest, and I do a lot of, research, and I study, and I get all the facts, and I get involved. And then, if it stops being interesting, I kind of go on to the next thing. And I've learned to kind of slow that down a little bit. And I see that with a lot of new investors. I see the what do you call it? Like the laser pointer syndrome, like a cat with a laser pointer. It's like, which way do I go? Oh, this is that. And, oh, wait, and it's like you hear about fix and flip, and you get really excited about that. Then you go, oh wait, short-term rentals. Oh wait, no, there's note investing. Oh wait, there's I can lend my money out to people. And then there's, oh wait, and it's like, I see a lot of people kind of getting into that kind of syndrome, and then they never take action on any one of those things, and they stay, a student instead of actually jumping in and trying. So, if there's one piece of advice that I can give you is kind of find an area that interests you, do some homework, don't get too book nerdy, and don't get too, don't think that you have to have, a doctorate in whatever, area of real estate that you want to be, good at. Just learn enough to where at least it reduces some of those, those mistakes, and that you can actually learn how to, not lose all your money in a deal, and then just go out and do it. Even though you don't know exactly what you're, everything about it, you don't have to know, what documents do I have to sign during buying this process? You don't have to know, like, how much does a faucet cost, or all the exact details right away. But you do have to jump in and get it started. And you have to start somewhere. And whether that's in note investing, house flipping, long-term rentals, short-term rentals, going out and buying apartment complexes, buying notes, whatever it is, go out and buy your first one. And make some mistakes. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. It's just not okay to make them over and over again. That's where, those pain points really hurt. That's one thing, that, I'm not perfect at, and I don't think anybody is. But if you can learn from your mistakes, it will offset having made those mistakes the first time, and it provides you with a learning experience to go through. And I'm learning as I go every day. I've been doing this for 30 years, probably more than most people on this, on this call right now. But I still don't know it all. And I still don't know every aspect of real estate, investing. But I know a little bit. I know that there are people around me that are capable of helping me kind of speed up my learning curve if I just ask, and if I participate and get to know some people, and find out, from the circle of my network, who to go to, and for answers to questions and things that I may have. Because there's an abundance of people within these types of clubs, and abundance of people that are at all stages of their investing career that I can tap into and, get some knowledge to avoid having to have some lumps on my head on a regular basis. And, I'm eternally grateful to jump into this club and all of the resources that I've been able to develop with this networking group. And other networking groups that are out there. If you're brand new, please, don't be the silent person sitting in the corner waiting for somebody to ask you to dance. get out there and ask other people to dance, and put your hand out there and tell people you're new. Don't be afraid of being in a new. Sometimes new people to whatever it is that they're doing are afraid to admit that they're new at doing it because they feel like, oh, well, I don't know anybody. They're going to laugh at me, or they're going to, make fun of me, or, or they're not going to take me serious, or whatever it is. I've found that, that if you speak up, people around here, these types of meetings are very helpful, very eager to help people, want to impart their knowledge, are not, secret holders and, have that secret sauce that they want to, hide from everybody. And unless they're going to pay for it, most people are very willing to give free advice. And most people are willing to, help you with problem solving, and, education, and things like that. But you have to do the work. You can't have other people doing it for you. It's one thing to ask somebody, for some advice and ask for help a couple of times. But when you keep going back with the same questions and the same problems over and over again, that's when people start to kind of go, well, I told you like 10 times already. It's like, well, how many more times do I have to tell you, kind of an attitude. So make sure that, you're doing your part, you're doing your homework, you're asking, intelligent questions and things like that, especially if you're looking for a mentor. A lot of people will come to the meetings I've found, and they'll be asking for mentor. Oh, I need a mentor. I need a mentor. But if you're looking for a mentor, I would advise you to, seek out people that are doing things that you want to do, and get to know them. Don't just walk up to them and say, can you be my mentor? It's kind of awkward, and it's much easier and less awkward if you develop a relationship with somebody and you get to know their personality and make sure that personality gels with you one way or another. I find that it helps me a lot that when I work with somebody that I find that it's best for me and my experience to find somebody that maybe has strengths where my weaknesses are, that maybe also has weaknesses where some of my strengths are, that I can participate in that relationship and that mentorship in a manner that's both beneficial to both of us rather than a one-way street, constantly. And making sure that our personalities gel, and that my morals and the way that I like doing business is the same as the person that I'm seeking advice from. I've been in the business a long time. I've seen a lot of shady stuff, and I've seen, outright fraud. I've seen, I've worked with people that had, a separate office that picked up the phone of, ABC construction company. How may I help you? Who do you want to verify income for? And, how many tax returns do you need? And, I've seen stuff like, all of that kind of stuff. That's just not how I like to do business. It doesn't, the way I like to do business is, with integrity and some honesty. It's so I like to seek out people that have those same qualities, because the advice that I'm going to get, is something that I can actually take with me and I can put into action, versus somebody that wants me to do it in a, back room type shady kind of manner to get it done. That's just not my cup of tea, so to speak. So definitely screen the people that you're talking to, and get to know people and see how they do business, how they treated other people, and things like that. So so that you're not one of those victims, so to speak, when all is said and done. Especially if you're talking about real estate investing, it is a very rewarding and punishing business at the same time. There are people out there, in the clubs and outside of the clubs that, really, don't have good intentions. I would say my experience has been that, more of them are, very good, people to take advice from and to work with. But, you do have to kind of vet the people that you're associating with when you're in these kinds of clubs. So, don't just trust every single person, that you see that maybe said something that you liked. Get to know them before you start doing business with people, and get to know where, what type of person they are, and things like that. When it comes to, what I do, I am a hard money lender. I have been doing loans for the last, 30 plus years. One of the things I understand is doing due diligence and looking at, the overall and really looking at the deal, not from a, I gotta buy this deal kind of standpoint, but from a standpoint of, does this deal really make sense? And are the numbers really what they are? I have a tendency, when I'm buying for myself, sometimes I'm just like a lot of other people that you get so narrowly focused on looking at the numbers and trying to make them work. But I've found that when I'm working too hard to make a deal work, that I need to take a step back and clear my head for a few minutes and just take another look again from a different lens. Because when I do that, I typically will find where those holes are or where those weaknesses are. Because when I'm putting together the deal and it's something that I think right off the bat is going to be a good thing, my tendency is to look at all the good things and then, offset those good things by those bad things, and not give enough weight to the risks that are involved sometimes. So when I take a second look, a lot of times those extra risks will come into play. And it kind of brings into light and kind of helps make my final decision on which way I need to go. And it's very helpful when you have a partner or a third party that can also confirm or maybe shed some light on your analysis of a deal. Because even though I've been doing this for a long time, there's times where I've looked it over with Thomas and Thomas brings something up, or in our conversation it brings something up to me that, oh wait, I didn't think about that, let's look at that as well. I found that it's always a good idea to have a second set of eyes. And if you're having a problem, if you're analyzing a deal and you're just not sure, I would advise, talk to your lender, whether that's me or, Trillion Capital or any of the other hard money lenders that are out there. Have them look at the deal too, because if they tell you no, that they won't lend on it, there's a reason. And it could be a reason that you overlooked or, you're not thinking of. And, it gives you either that confirmation or that, that second set of eyes with some new information to be able to make an informed, good decision on what you're going to do. On a regular basis, I have people call me, ask me about, can you help me run the numbers? And when we run the numbers, sometimes I'm like, man, this is a smoking deal. Good job. Jump all over it. This is a great deal. And sometimes I'm looking at it going, I don't know about this deal. The numbers that I'm seeing are much different. Especially when people are looking at wholesaler deals that have come across their email, and they're new. I find that, wholesalers are just like every other salesperson out there. They're going to put together a presentation with all the highlights and the rainbows and butterflies to make the deal look good. And they're gonna leave out all those negatives and the you know the downside risks that are involved to sell that deal. And you really need to look and double check and do your own math. Don't just take for granted what they said in the email is true. Even though they're providing you with comps, run your own comps. I've done that numerous times, and 80% of the wholesale deals, when I run the comps, my comps are slightly different than theirs. There's probably a 30% of the wholesalers that I work with have extremely good numbers that when I run my numbers, they line up accordingly with that, and things like that. So I was kind of thrown into this a little like last minute, and I didn't have a nice presentation to provide everybody with. But are there any questions about hard money lending, or something that you're going through right now that you'd like to ask that maybe I can help with answering some questions? Like I said, I know Fannie Freddie guidelines, I know FHA guidelines, I know most of the hard money guidelines. If you have questions on how to analyze a refinance, how to analyze a fix and flip, please, raise your hand and chime in. Rodney.
Yes. Hey, Ryan, you did a great job, and thank you for speaking tonight. I really appreciate that. You spoke on raising capital.
Yes.
Can you speak on that process?
Yeah.
What?
Sure. I mean, raising capital is about relationships. One of the things that, I'm interested in history, and I like to read and know about, and educate myself. And one of the things that I learned when I was doing, a lot of research into, the origins of money and how it came to be like this modern type of money, so to speak. And one of the things I found was that that with money, it's about trust. There's money is trust. I mean, it started out with, shells and clay, pieces and jewelry and things like that as a trading source. And it developed into, coin money and things like that. But the one thing that they all had in common was when I trade something, I can expect that I'm going to be able to use that in another trade, and I should be able to get this kind of value out of it. And when you're raising money, it's also about trust. And it's very difficult to raise money when you don't have a relationship, or at least some sort of trust factor to break that ice. And if you're new to doing it and you don't know a lot of people, one of the best ways to start, getting to know people that are willing to lend money or that will help you raise money, is to go out and provide some value to those people. And most of the time that value is in finding a deal. I have found it very true that if you find a good deal and the numbers work, the money will follow you and chase you. So if you're sitting there trying to think, how do I raise money so I can go look at property and go acquire property, you're probably more than likely going to have a very difficult time with raising that money, especially if you're new and you don't have a lot of connections. It's hard to go to your relatives and say, oh, let's go raise some money and go, because all the relatives are, yeah, Uncle Joe, they lost a lot of money when they bought that rental property and in Tennessee that one year, and yeah, I'm a little shady. I'm okay with my money in the the stock's doing 4 or 5% right now. But if you have a the ability to show them some numbers and, show them, a property that is undervalued, all of a sudden their ears start perking up. How'd you come across that? What'd you do? Like, oh, that really is a good deal. Maybe, maybe I've got a little extra money that I can, I can put in and help you out with. Versus just saying, oh yeah, I just found, I want to go flip a house. Will you give me some money to help me? So my advice is, if you're new, you're just starting out, don't worry so much about the money, worry about finding the deal. And then once you find the deal, well, no, let me take that back. One step back. Start developing relationships. Start developing a network. Start learning about that network and developing those relationships, and then go find a deal. Because once you find that deal, if you have a strong network, your network will fund that deal, is what I've found. Especially if it's a network with investors. If your whole network is just your buddies from high school, and you guys are drinking buddies, or you guys are softball buddies or whatever, it's probably going to be harder to raise capital from that group rather than going out to network meetings like this and meeting other investors that are doing this on a regular basis, or people that are involved in this. Because once you start doing some of these deals, those drinking buddies, those softball buddies, those high school friends will see what you're doing and start asking questions. And if you've got that experience and you look like you're you appear that you've got some experience in doing this, and that you are being successful at doing this, that's when those kinds of friends and family will start coming out of the woodwork to ask you questions and start offering money. And it'll go from, you asking everybody out there, I need money, to a time where you've got people approaching you saying, hey, I heard you've done a couple of deals, and, and I've heard you're doing really well. And, do you ever accept money from people to maybe help them, out as well, and, invest that money for them in these deals? And next thing you know, you've got more people coming, you've got more money than deals, is kind of the progression at some point in time, which is a good problem to have, because that's just more encouragement to go out there and work harder and market harder and find more deals to be able to use that before it's gone. Before your aunt and uncle decide to buy a car, with the money they were going to give you, things like that. So, there are some progressions, but I think that the most important thing as a new person, is getting out there, shaking hands, kissing babies, getting to know the other investors that are out there, and making yourself known, and not hiding in the corner and just, doing I'm just educating myself right now, kind of a player, so to speak.
Hey, Ryan, let me piggyback real quick. Hey, Rodney.
Yes.
The best way, like Ryan said, that's one, but you also, in these communities, you want to find out how the investors buying and what they're buying. Now, once you find that out, you go find their deals. And once you find those deals, they'll buy it all day long. You wouldn't have to say one word. You put it out there, got this property, you know what they're looking for, you know how they buy, you go find that, and bam, they're going to buy it all the time, without a doubt. You wouldn't have to say a word because you've already brought them what they need. That's how I end up starting. I end up learning what my investors wanted to and how they bought. And every time I brought them what they wanted, they bought all my deals. And I had no idea what the hell I was doing, but they bought every deal because I found out what they buy and how they buy. Once I did that, it was golden all day long.
Much appreciated. Thank you both.
That's why you have to stay in these communities. That's why I told you, Rodney, you got to stay in these communities. You can't disappear. Rodney, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, I tease him a lot. I've been knowing Rodney for how long? 5 years now?
Yeah, close
Yeah,
to that.
I've been teasing Rodney along. This guy has we all got compelling stories, but I love his story. I love his story. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna get him to speak one day once he stop being shy, but I'm gonna get him to speak. You also doing something on Instagram, correct?
Yes,
Tell the people
absolutely.
what you're doing.
Now, I got a lot of stuff going on actually. As I said, matter of fact, I'm gonna put my info in the chat. That's what I'm gonna do.
Okay.
I'm gonna put my info in the chat. I don't want to interrupt Ryan and whoever's next.
A little while.
Hey, I also want to thank Alex. Hey, knocked it out the park. Hey, I'm glad I showed up tonight.
I appreciate
Tremendous
you.
value.
I appreciate you. But
Thank
like
you.
I said, I tell people, number one, Nike got the best slogan in the world, and that's just do it. You know, you never know what you can't accomplish because you don't have the criteria. Stop thinking like the world thinks and think like what God has placed in you. You'll find out you will overcome everything you ever wanted to do in life if you stop thinking like the world. Just straight up, you know. Somebody on here, I forgot her name.
Chris, you had a question.
Oh yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm taking over. Go ahead.
No, I believe he answered the question while he was speaking. I was just wondering what type of deals do you look for, but Thomas kind of answered it when he started speaking. I was like, oh, okay, that was the question I was going to ask on getting to know the investors. By the way, you know what they're looking for. So when you go out there, you know, you already have gotten what they are looking for.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, if you're going to be, it depends on what you're doing and what is your interest in real estate and, you know, what capacity are you trying to be in? You know, if you're going to be a wholesaler and that's what your goal is that, you know, because the progression I think is the easiest to get into the business is starting out in a position like as a wholesaler, because it doesn't require a lot of capital. It requires a small EMD amount of money, maybe $500, $2,000 to be able to put an earnest money down to secure a contract and to open up escrow. And, you know, that's about it, you know, as far as capital goes on each deal. So it's a little more, the bar is a little lower from a capital standpoint to jump into this and be able to do this on a regular basis and start getting to know. And wholesaling will do a lot of, it will help you understand a lot of the basics and the fundamentals of real estate. It is identical in nature to being a real estate agent, only you're not licensed. You know, and you're going to do almost the same type of marketing. You're going to do almost the same type of talking to people and you know, and things like that. So when you're marketing, you know, for properties, you want to know what the appetite is to be able to sell. So, you know, as a wholesaler, one of the first things that you should start doing is building up a buyer's list and talking to those buyers and talking to them about what their appetite is. Do they like single families? Do they like, you know, certain areas? Do they like, you know, heavy fixers, light fixers? You know, and by doing that and keeping notes about what people like, it's easier for you to market the properties that you do run across. Because if you're sending out, you know, if you're out there looking at nothing but duplexes and all the people that are in your network that are buyers only want single families, you know, it's going to make your life a lot harder to be able to get that thing closed or bought in a, you know, in a quick manner if you don't know what the appetite is. And by, you know, learning that, eventually you start coming across more deals that fit that parameter. And next thing you know, you're learning more and more about different types of properties because of what you're hunting and you're trying to fit into that box. You're learning, you know, okay, is is this a good deal because, you know, it's a burnt out property? Is it a, you know, for your investors, you know, what are the problems? Because your investors are going to tell you what the problems are of, you know, the properties they don't want to buy from you. And then you should start putting that together as a list, start going, okay, well, these are the things they don't like. So I should stay away from burnt out houses, or I should stay away from, you know, houses that have tenants in them, or maybe that's the appetite of, you know, your investor and they want to buy properties with tenants in it. And you're finding, you know, a lot of people, you know, have a hard time selling, you know, properties that have tenants in it. So maybe that's your specialty niche, you know, to kind of break in and be successful. So, you know, I mean, I would highly recommend that if you don't have a lot of capital and you want to get into real estate, no matter what laser pointer, you know, item that you're looking at, trying to decide, I would recommend you start out doing some wholesaling, if nothing else, just to get the repetitive actions going and your learning curve started by learning how to talk to sellers, learning how to negotiate, learning how to, you know, start to, you know, get a contract signed, learning how to go open up escrow, learning how to go out and market that property and things like that. Because once you learn some of those basic skills, it's like I said, you can go out and get a doctorate in any type of investing you want to do, but until you actually do it, it's going to be foreign in nature to you. It's not going to be natural for you. It's going to be uncomfortable when you start doing those first couple of deals. And until you get those under your belt, it's going to be that way. Once you have a few deals under your belt, it starts becoming easier, and you start remembering things that maybe, you know, you didn't know you had to do. You know, and you know, by going out there and just kind of doing it over and over again as a wholesaler, you know, you learn a lot. It's like being a real estate agent, really, in my opinion. And you know, I hear people talking about, oh, I should go get my license before I start investing because I want to be able to sell my blah, 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 and do this and that because I have a real estate license now. But you know, when you're learning how to do investing, a real estate license actually can be more of a hindrance to you than not having one. And because you've got to disclose, you've got a certain set of criteria, you've got to, you know, you've got Big Brother overlooking all of your transactions, and you know, and you know, there are some heavy-handed fines that can happen as a real, you know, as a licensed person that you wouldn't have as a wholesaler or an unlicensed person, you know, and things like that. So I would say that, you know, that for most people, not everybody, but for most people, especially if you have very little capital, wholesaling is probably the number one thing that you should probably start learning how to do. Just to be able to get that experience under your belt. And once you've got some of those building blocks, they apply to all the other type of investing in one way or another. Maybe it's just a small little building block on like, you know, learning how to, you know, wholesale properties and you know, note investing. There's principles and foundational work that you should know that will apply to note investing if that's what you're interested in. There's stuff from wholesaling that, you know, that you learn and you get to know and build those, you know, foundations that'll help you with buy and holds, that'll help you with going out and buying, you know, large units, or doing short-term rentals, or, you know, doing, you know, some of those other, you know, other avenues that might interest you as well. So, you know, I encourage you to go out there and just, you know, start figuring out how to, you know, market to buy property, and start wholesaling. You know, and if wholesaling is not your game, find something else and just start doing it so that you get the experience, so that it can you can get those building blocks to be able to apply to, you know, any other avenue that you'd like to get into.
All right, Wayne had a question, then after Wayne, Michelle had one, but Susan answered. If Michelle still have something, we'll let her go, and then we'll let Arthur go next.
Sure.
Go ahead, Wayne.
I really didn't have a question. I was just gonna piggyback on what Ryan was saying. For the newcomers, I think it's a few, at least a couple that's here. Going to the meetings, it doesn't help them right away, but you get to meet people. They see you, you become a familiar face. And it happened with me. I think it was 2 years after I was going to another meeting. That person ended up funding my buy and hold. He knew me better than I knew him. It wasn't until I saw him that I knew who he was. But you sit down at the table, you listen, you go to these meetings, you listen to people, you share your thoughts and talking to them. They get to know what you're looking for. I know I put out that I was looking for some units, and this blast came across. It didn't even come to me. I just happened to be there when it came across. We went and looked at it, and that's what I wanted. As soon as I got it, you got the property where the wholesaler was willing to, not the wholesaler, the guy who funded my loan saw it, and it was a good investment. And he hasn't gone wrong because he's been getting paid every month since I gotten it. But you go to these meetings, you meet the people, you don't know who have the money and who don't have the money. But when you come in and you have a property and they know the area and they know the property is it's a good deal, they have no problems investing in it. It helps when they get to see a familiar face, though. That's all I want to put out there.
Okay, Michelle, did you want to ask your question, or was it answered by Susan?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, thank you, Susan. I wrote that down. I was just trying to search to buy that book right now, but I don't know if oh, I'm sorry. Ryan. Yeah, Ryan, you're the speaker, correct? I don't know. Okay, yeah, sorry.
Hi, Michelle.
Ryan Raven. Hi. I don't know if you have anything to add. My question was basically, and Susan did give me a great source. My question was where a newcomer, brand new to investing, could best learn how to analyze deals. Like, is there one source in particular? You'd mentioned that. And she mentioned the book by John Schaub called Building Wealth One House at a Time, which I was just about to buy.
Fantastic book to learn. You know, one of the things that there's a lot of free resources out there that you can tap into, start learning how to analyze a deal. And one of the most important things that I find about you know, analyzing a deal is trying to figure out the market and to kind of figure out where values are within a certain market. And once you can start doing that, it's much easier to identify potential deals and start doing further analysis. So by understanding, like, are you from the Riverside area?
No, I'm actually in Los Angeles, but I'm looking to move somewhere, not sure where yet.
Okay. So like in your market, which part of LA are you in?
I'm in the San Fernando Valley.
Okay. So, you know, I mean, one thing that you can start paying attention to is your immediate surrounding neighborhood. It's the easiest one typically for most people to kind of figure out, you know, what are prices that are selling in that area. You know, there's Zillow, there's Redfin, there's all of these other resources, and it's not just looking at the Zestimate or the estimated value is on properties in your neighborhood. What you should be doing is looking at what is sold in the area in the last 6 months. That's very comparable. So take a look and you know, practice by, you know, looking up what is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,700 square foot house in this neighborhood going for? What is a 3,000, you know, square foot, you know, 5-bedroom, you know, with a pool going for in a neighborhood? You know, and looking in those neighborhoods and using those free websites to find out what's sold. They all show you what's sold in the area. And just kind of like for example, Zillow, you'll go onto Zillow and you'll see a lot of sold stuff. Go in, click those things, look at those, look at the pictures, look at the quality of what that house looks like compared to what you're trying to compare it to. you know, when you're looking at comparable properties, you really want to try and get it as like for like as possible. So if somebody tells you that, you know, there's a great deal in this neighborhood, the first thing that you should be doing is going to those websites and seeing what everything else is selling for. Because if they're saying it's a great deal, you know, for one person, a great deal may be a 5% discount. You know, another person thinks a great deal is a 30% discount. You know, most investors want to be somewhere, you know, under 80% of whatever the neighborhood is selling for their investments. You know, if it's going to be a fix and flip, they want to make sure it's less than 80, you know, less than 75% minus whatever the repair costs are. So if you find something in a neighborhood that's selling for the neighborhood selling for 500,000, and somebody tells you at 450 that's a great deal, you'll be able to identify that, you know, 450 might not quite work, you know, for a fix and flip, but it may work for a rental. You know, or it may be a great deal for, you know, somebody wanting to buy that house and live in. But, you know, for a fix and flip investor, that's not a great deal. Whereas maybe you run across something that's selling for 250,000 and needs, you know, 50 grand worth of work, and the neighborhood sells for 500,000. I think that if you found a deal like that, just about any investor would go, I'll fund that deal for you. You know, so I would start getting familiar with those websites and start learning how to identify what neighborhoods are, you know, what values are within neighborhoods. And then from there, take it a step further and then start figuring out what do repairs cost? And you know, our next speaker is going to probably help you kind of figure that out. And, you know, getting good at kind of looking at pictures and going, you know, this is probably a $30,000 to $60,000 repair, or this is a, you know, $100,000 to $110,000 repair, or this is a $10,000 repair, you know, property. That would be your next step in doing your due diligence after you've figured out your values, is trying to analyze, you know, how much work actually really needs to be done on that property. And you can only do so much based on pictures. Eventually you got to go to the house, and then you got to look at the house and figure that out. But, you know, when you're doing your initial investigation, don't spend 10 days trying to investigate. This is stuff that you can do within a day, and with estimates only. And once you get it under contract, or once you identify that it has a lot of potential, then look at the property, and then do further investigation. Have a contractor go out there with you when you go look at the property. If you're not very familiar with, you know, costs to repair, get a home inspection done, things like that to help, you know, areas. If you're not very good at that kind of stuff, a home inspection will give you a great opportunity to find out what's wrong with it. Taking a contractor out with you is going to give you a great idea of a general, you know, even if it's, you know, just a random contractor, they're at least going to give you a ballpark to give, you know, what your repair costs are, to do a further analysis of the deal. And most of the time when you're writing up a contract, don't be afraid to write up the contract and renegotiate after you find out there's $40,000 worth of repairs that you didn't account for. And don't be afraid to lose the deal because the seller's not being willing to come down on their price based on your newfound information. Walking away from a deal probably is the most profitable thing that you can do if you're in a bad deal. You know, don't keep going after it, trying to make it work. Don't try and, you know, beat a dead horse to try and bring it back to life, so to speak. You know, and my advice is just, you know, like I just said, you know, get involved in, you know, those websites and learn how to figure out what neighborhoods are selling for. Don't just take somebody else's word for it.
Also, if you don't know how to come up with your numbers, we have a spreadsheet that we can send to you. We're not charging, it's free. It'll help calculate everything which you should purchase, what your after repair cost is going to be when you resell it, how much you're going to get, whether or not you JV that deal to someone or if you wholesale it. So we can send that spreadsheet out to you at no cost. So
Thomas, what are you doing? You're giving away our secret sauce, man.
So you can either reach out to Ryan or myself, and we can go from there. We're gonna get ready to drop this one and get to the second tag, which is Arthur Mayer. He's the contractor. It's on you. Bring it home, Arthur.
Hey, thanks, Thomas, and thanks, Ryan, for all the info and having me come on to speak about construction. So, as you mentioned, I'm Arthur. I'm a general contractor in Southern California. I specialize in garage conversions, ADUs. So hopefully we have a little open discussion if you guys have any questions regarding construction, rehabbing on the contractor side, because there's a lot of things that go involved in it, and sometimes these things get missed by rehabbers. So I go a little bit about me, and then if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask away at any time, interrupt me anytime.
One quick thing. Ladies and gentlemen, to let you know, this is our contractor. So
for now, yeah,
exactly, until he screws up.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Which happens a lot in construction. So yeah, so I've got 10 years experience. I used to do project management for other General B contractors. So I've managed crews before. I've done everything from estimating jobs, selling the jobs, to meeting inspectors, dealing with the city. I think to date, I have over $8 million worth of contracts that our company has done. But we really jumped in the past 2 or 3 years, really focused on 5 different things: accessory dwelling units, Sharon certified in that, garage conversions, home additions, kitchen remodels, bathroom remodels, and just general home renovations. We've dealt in over 20 different cities, dealing with the permitting process. So I'm pretty familiar with the permitting process, which is an important part. Well, for some rehabbers, the permitting process is an important part of the rehab. We've built elevators. I've done custom kitchens. I've done bathrooms. I've built elevators for residential houses. We've done commercial conference rooms, and we've done real estate offices, Thai massages. So we have a pretty in-depth portfolio. We've done public works projects too, with Tomco, who's our, one of our clients. Right now, I believe we have over 20 contracts right now that we're either in the permit process or we're working on. And we also specialize in a lot of financing too, because that's the big part of the construction side. But jumping into it, if you guys ever dealt with contractors, you hear them all the time say they're licensed, they're bonded, and they're insured. Do you guys know the difference between being licensed, bonded, and insured? Nobody? So
no.
Okay, so because you hear it all the time if you've dealt with contractors, oh yeah, we're licensed, bonded, and insured. So your license is obviously your trade, right? So I have a General B license, so I have a general building license. So I do things that require 3 or more trades according to the state of California. So if, like kitchen requires plumbing and electrical work and tiling work and carpentry work. A licensed electrician specializes in all your electrical. If you guys are rehabbing residential, includes all your roughs and your finishes. A bond in the state of California, to be an active licensed contractor, you need to have what's called a contractor's bond. So a contractor's bond is ultimately to protect the consumer, or in this case, if you bought a property and you are the homeowner, to protect you, because what a bond does is it guarantees the labor and material. So if a contractor goes out and they decide to get a contract with you and you give them money, they finish the job and you pay them in full. And let's say for some reason a vendor puts a lien on your house, or a subcontractor calls and says, we haven't gotten paid by him, but you already paid that contractor in full. Well, you could then use the bond to pay out the labor and materials of whatever the contractor hasn't paid. So a bond's very important for a lot of our clients to, it makes them that peace of mind, like, hey, if you give me the money, I don't pay my guys, I don't pay my vendors, then you're protected. So every contractor, at least in the state of California, I don't know what the requirements are in other states. I'm only speaking for the state of California. That's a requirement to have an active license. The insurance, there's different types of insurance, but insurance, general liability insurance, is to protect the house they're working on. So for example, if I'm contracted to do a kitchen remodel, and let's say I'm not contracted to do the floor because they already got nice flooring in and they just want a contractor to do the kitchen. Let's say something happens and something falls and breaks that new floor. Well, that's where the insurance comes in, because as a consumer, as a homeowner, you could put in a claim to that insurance. Most contractors have $1 million insurance, and that insurance pays for any damages in the house. So obviously for certain contractors like roofers, that insurance is a lot more. It costs a lot more. The premiums are higher, but the damages can be more severe, right? If you pull off a roof and it decides to rain on the day you pull off the roof, well, you could cause quite a bit of damage. So you could then put in a claim to the contractor to get a payment for that. Now, not all general liability insurance is the same. There's commercial coverage, there's residential coverage. There's also exclusions. So if the contractor claims that he only does, let's say, flooring, but that contractor decides to do a roof and his insurance excludes the roof, well, there's a chance where that insurance won't pay out for the job. So for guys like me, since I do new construction and I do remodeling of the house, I have a $1 million or $2 million aggregate policy that covers the house to make sure that if anything goes wrong, if damages happen that were not part of the scope of the work, that insurance is in place to make sure that the homeowner's protected. The other type of insurance is workers' comp. So any contractor that has employees on your job site needs to have workers' comp that covers them. So it is important that you check the contractor, because there are plenty of contractors that claim exempt from workers' comp. So because we hire licensed subcontractors all the time. So this is stuff we know, and this is stuff we look for. We always ask for a certificate of insurance in most cases, unless they're decided to work for us as an employee. But you can claim exempt from workers' comp. You are basically telling the state of California, hey, I'm not hiring any employees, so I'm exempt from having workers' comp. There are exemptions from that. For example, roofs, you are required to have workers' comp whether you have no employees or not. And so the workers' comp insurance is to obviously protect in case you have an employee who cuts his finger off. He's trying to cut tile and cuts his finger off. Well, your insurance covers that. So, you could get into details when you're hiring contractors to ask for a copy of their policies to make sure they have the proper policy for the type of work being done. So if you're rehabbing a residential project, you want to make sure that that contractor has not only an active license for the trade that's being done, but you want to make sure the contractor has the proper insurance for your job too. I know, as rehabbers, we're always trying to save a dollar. And sometimes we hire guys that may not have that, but you could end up in a lot of trouble if they don't have insurances. The other thing, especially when it comes to due diligence with contractors, I tell people this: you don't hire a dentist to do surgery. So we've experienced this. So from my learning experiences and from my mistakes, you don't hire a plumber to do the electrical work, just like you wouldn't hire a tile guy to put in cabinets. So if you have a light rehab and some guy says, hey, I know how to do the electrical work, or hey, I know how to do the plumbing work, it's a really good idea to make sure that they have the proper licensing for it. So when we do work on houses, especially if I'm doing big construction like additions or ground up ADUs, when you're dealing with, water lines, gas lines, hot and cold, you could be in very big trouble if that's not done properly. So I hire guys that have a specialty license for plumbing. So in the state of California, you could find a license for almost any trade. So if your project is as simple as just hanging drywall, you can find California contractors that just have a drywall license. If you're looking to just paint the house, you can find a contractor just for painting that have a painting license. Same with central heating and air, mini splits. You can hire central heating and air, C20 contractors. So it's always a good idea. It's always recommended. I'm telling you from personal experience and plenty of mistakes we've made in the past, that if you're rehabbing a house, you want to try to get, unless it's a general building contractor that has all those trades, if it's a light remodel and you just need some flooring replaced, it's probably a good idea to either find a licensed flooring guy or a licensed tile guy to do that specific work. At this point, because of the learning experiences in the 10 years, the license says a lot about if the person's capable of doing the work or not. Someone can swear up and down, hey, I can run grounds and roughs for plumbing, and I can do this and that. Well, if you don't have the proper license, in at least in our company's eyes, and in my personal opinion, it increases the risk of him capable of doing the job right. You will find guys, it's very common, you could find guys that specialize in heating and air, electrical, and plumbing. So they focus on all three of those. Or you'll find guys with single trade, but it's very rare you're going to find a guy that can do everything. So even a company like I've assembled cabinets before. I put baseboards together before. I know carpentry. I know the hardware required for framing. I'm not the best. I know code for electrical, but I always have a licensed electrician running the wires for our house. One thing too about hiring a contractor, one of the biggest general things, and it's kind of a myth, they always tell you to get 3 bids for a contractor, right? Get 3 bids and you're playing it safe. I think it comes down more to who you're talking to, the feel you get of the person. That person may be the first guy. You may have to go through 20 guys. I think it really comes down to more, instead of just getting 3 bids, go with the guy that you feel comfortable with. I always talk construction talk, even if people are not too familiar with construction, but I'm always trying to educate people too. If I'm walking a property or I'm bidding a project, I like to try to educate people on the scope of work, what's to be done. The bids alone, not all bids are the same. Just because you have 3 bids from an electrician and this guy's the lowest, that may not be the best guy. The lowest guy may have forgotten this. He's going to start the job. He's going to ask you for extras and change orders and bait and switch you. Sometimes the highest guy is the best guy. At the end of the day, we want to get the job done right. And although you want to save money, it doesn't necessarily mean that. And one thing I've learned the hard way, because when I made the most mistakes, I was always told, Arthur, you got to get your prices down. You got to get them lower. You got to find cheaper guys. And I learned the hard way that doesn't work at all. It's one of the worst and most costly mistakes I've ever made. And it was 2 years ago where I decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to bring on my own employees. I'm not going to hire licensed subs anymore because I want to save money. I can tell you from personal experience that it cost me 6 figures worth of damages. So it's my personal advice that if you're going to rehab, you're going to fix stuff up, especially if you're doing a big construction project like an addition, you want to make sure you have the proper trades. I don't price now for the bottom market, but I hire really good guys. I think off someone, I offer Christmas bonuses to my contractors, my office manager. I take these guys out, my project manager. I'm going to get benefits now in the future, health, these things all cost money, to have project manager for quality control, things like that. So don't think because someone has a higher bid, that this isn't the bad guy. Just like I would, oh, well, this real estate agent only wants a 1% commission. Well, this person wants 5%, but they're giving you top dollar on your house. So what makes more sense? The guy at 1% who leaves your property listed for 5 months, or the guy at 5% who has connections? Same thing. So in construction, it's the same way. The old saying, you get what you pay for. We always pay top guys. I'm not the cheapest. I'm not, because I can't hire guys because there's too much headache and there's too much trouble not hiring right. And this isn't just contracting. It's, lenders, real estate agents, all this stuff that you need to make sure the job's done right. So, when you're rehabbing properties and you say, hey, I've only got a budget of this, I don't want to pull permits and I need to be out there in 30 days. It's very important. I try to be realistic with people, especially since I work with a lot of investors now. I try to be realistic when we look at a property. I provide prices that get the job done right. So it's very important that when you're hire for specialty trades if it's a light construction, or a licensed building contractor that can handle multiple trades. So again, the building contractor is for 3 or more trades. In the state of California, I'm not allowed to contract for just a roof. I'm not allowed to contract for just a painting job. There has to be at least 3 or more trades in what I'm doing, which is why I like the kitchens, the bath, and because it's easier to get a license for those things, or a permit for those things, because that's what my license is for. I could do 3 or more specialty trades. If you're doing a single trade, go with a single trade guy. Now, if you're still looking to save money, we typically have guys that do their own work. So if you are looking for money to save, on your rehab, I'll give away my secrets because, it's fine because, the contractors board, you can find all sorts of contractors. Google is your best friend too. You can find great quality contractors. But if you're looking to save money, but you still want the job done right, look for the guys that are owner occupied, owner operated, do their own work. If you hire a big company, they may charge you big company prices. I said, like, I've got overhead, I've got offices, I've got, my premiums. I've got an office manager who just took off Hawaii for a week, but she's coming back. And, I have project managers that, inspect the work, check quality control. And these are things that are needed for me to be able to scale all these projects. But to help out in saving you money, it may be a great idea to find out if the guy's doing his own work versus if you're calling and you're calling and looking for an electrician, and a secretary picks up, and then they're sending estimators out there, and then there's different crews that do the job. Those guys are probably going to be a lot more expensive than maybe, the guy who has a cell phone and he's doing his own work. And that may save you some money on the project. So like my plumber, he's an independent guy. He does his own work. He's very knowledgeable. He knows new construction plumbing. He does great grounds. All my water tests always pass with him, all my air tests. My electrician, same way. He's an independent guy. He runs his own stuff. He's very flexible with pricing, but you may have the budget. And for some people, you may just go with the big company. The big companies do it right. Some people, big developers, they pay these companies big money and they do track homes, and they have these big companies come in and do it right. I hire True Team for insulation. They're a huge company. They do track homes. But a couple of the resources I have in there, they'll come out and insulate and do Q2, which is sealing around the insulation, so you have an airtight seal for new construction, and they'll do my job. So we have a mix. Some independent guys, some big companies we hire to do our work. But at the end of the day, we have a specialty trade for every division of construction, and that. And again, I'm just speaking from personal experience. Some people have, well, I know this guy, he doesn't have a license, but he's awesome. I know this other guy, he's a great plumber. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but in the masses, from our experience, the guy, I've been plumbing for 20 years, but I don't have a license for whatever reason, may not do it right. And the scary thing is, since if they're not licensed, then they don't have a bond. And once you pay them and they don't have a license, it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to get them back on the property. So, take the advice as you will. Like I said, I'm not stepping on guys' toes that don't have licenses that do good work. I'm sure that's out there. There's definitely guys out there that big companies that do great work. But for rehabbers, if you can find the independent guys and they're licensed in that specific trade, they give you good prices, then you're golden. And then that ensures that the quality of work is good, that the stuff gets done right. The drawback is the independent guys, usually they're very busy because they don't have an office, they don't have employees. They don't have, a system in place or structure in place to run their jobs. So, they get 5, 6, 7 jobs, they're booked up for a couple of months. So it's usually a good idea not to rely on just one electrician. So my office manager, she, part of her day, or almost all of her day, is basically focused on recruiting. So we are always constantly trying to find a backup electrician, backup plumber, backup concrete guy, backup drywaller. Because subcontractors, sometimes they get comfortable with you and they try to pull a fast one or try to bait and switch you. And you know, and it's nice to have a backup and know that you don't rely on this one guy. So that's one of the big keys for hiring. The other thing is being as detailed as possible. Again, you guys can stop me anytime. I'm just going to keep talking until someone asks a question. But make sure it's as detailed as possible. So if you're hiring a guy, so let's go over finishes for a second, unless someone has a question. So let's say you're contracting and part of your rehab is you want cabinets done. Well, what type of cabinets? Do you want MDF cabinets, RTA, which is MDF is a type of wood. It's a compressed wood. It's pretty common. Most rehabbers have shaker cabinets. But you know, be as detailed as possible. The type of handles you want. Do you want knobs? Do you want handles? Do you want the inside shelves to be particle board and save money? Or do you want to go with plywood? Do you want that semi-gloss cabinet? Do you want frameless? Frameless cabinets are usually double the price, in my experience. Countertops. What type of countertops do you want? Do you want quartz? Do you want granite? Do you want an island? On the cabinets, do you want Lazy Susans? Do you want spice racks? And this is where a lot of times you get into trouble with the contractor to investor or homeowner relationship, is if those details are not laid out. So, you know, when we do cabinets, we detail how many cabinets. You know, is there 6 on the wall? Is there 8 on the bottom? How do they open? What type of hardware do you need for it? The type of faucet you want, you know, do you want a farmer sink, a double sink, a single sink? Do you want a backsplash? What type of tile backsplash do you want? You know, what type of, you know, do you want the Gulo handles, the fancier ones for it? Do you want, so there's a lot of different options just in those finishes alone. So, you know, you want to be as detailed as possible because, and we still deal with it today. You know, I give a concrete contractor in Big Bear some plans for stem walls, and it has footings for stairs we're building too. So he finished the stem wall and he's like, well, I'm done. It's time to pay me. So my project manager goes out there and none of the stairs are done. And he tries to give an excuse. Oh, well, I don't know the measurements. We don't know until the stairs are built. And I didn't include that in. So that does happen from time to time, you know, but that's where a good project manager is good because they know this is what's on the plans. This is what we plan to do. So it's also very important from those learning experiences, you know, make sure before you use the contractor, make sure like, hey, I'm good with the numbers. I'm good with the proposal. Let's just walk the job one more time. You know, because things can get missed. You know, electrician says, oh, you didn't tell me you need a dedicated for the appliances. Well, that's pretty standard. You know, I mean, it's not required by law, but it's pretty standard that like your appliances need to have a dedicated electrical circuit for it, like a dedicated 15 amp for your appliances. And, oh, I didn't know I needed a light in the attic and that this city requires it. Well, this is why it's really important. You walk with your contractor on these jobs to make sure that all of this is covered. So, you know, like I said, like that's what we go over with cabinets. Flooring, type of flooring, what type of grout do you want? What type of baseboards are you putting in? For bathrooms, you've got your, you know, the type of vanity. I mean, and it makes a difference. I mean, there's 30-inch vanities you can get off the shelf for $400. And I saw one on Zillow for a $55 million house, and it was a $250,000 vanity. So it's really good that you kind of go over budgets a little bit with the contractor. Find out, hey, what do we have to spend on for countertops? What do we have to spend on material wise for kitchen cabinets? What is in the budget in your quote or in your bid or in your proposal that I can spend on flooring? Because there's flooring out there for $1 a square foot, $2 a square foot, and there's high-end stuff I've seen $7, $8, $9 a square foot. So you want to make sure if you're doing rehabs and you have your contractor, any type of project, even on your own personal house, that those budgets are either picked out, or to make it easier, sometimes we will just provide a labor price, or you can have your contractor provide a labor price. That way you can pick out whatever you want. If you want sensor faucets, spend $300 a faucet, go for it. It's up to you. If you want those lighted medicine cabinets that go for like $300-400 a medicine cabinet, you can do that. Or the touch light, or the Bluetooth exhaust fans in bathrooms, or you wanted heated floors, you know. So all those things, we make sure we detail that when we're talking to people, whether it's clients, rehabbers, what's in the budget and what can be done. So yeah, the big thing is when you're hiring the contractors, you just want to make sure that there's a couple of laws. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Is anyone familiar with the 10% down or $1,000 law with contractors? Does anyone know their rights with contractors in terms of money or anything like that? Okay, so California is one of the strictest. So a California contractor, so number one, T&M contracts are no longer allowed. I think they were actually outlawed in 2006. T&M stands for time and materials. So sometimes we get asked, can you do a time and material contract? I just pay your guys and pay a fee. Those are no longer allowed. Now, not saying you can't do that, but if the contractor is willing to break law with that, then you got to ask yourself, what else are they willing to break in terms of laws? So contracts with contractors have to have a few things. And if you guys want to see copies of contracts like mine are pretty detailed. They're 5 pages. It has a lot of legal jargon. But the first thing is the total price, right? And the scope of work to be done. So every California contractor has to have that. The 10% rule, or $1,000, and again, I can't vouch for other states. They may be different in other states. You can maybe take more, or it may not apply to other states. But a California contractor, if your contract is over a certain amount, they are not allowed to take 10% or $1,000, whichever's less. So if I have a contract with you for $30,000, I can't take more than $1,000 up front. The other thing in the contract, I don't do percentages like, hey, when 25% is done, I get a draw. When 50% is done, I get a draw. I don't do that personally. And the reason why I don't do that is because there's a lot of gray area, right? What's 25%? What does that entail? I personally set up my contracts when we get certain things like, hey, when you approve of plans, I get a draw, or hey, when the permits are issued, then we get a draw. When an inspection passes, the city or county comes out and passes an inspection, then we get a draw. But it does need to clearly indicate the draw schedule of what you're paying and what stage of the contract you're paying. Now, if you are deeply concerned about, even if they're bonded, as I talked about earlier, if a contractor's bonded and they take your money and run, and then you order all this material and the material wasn't paid for, you can request joint checks, and that may be more important for bigger projects. Joint checks basically meaning, if the vendor, like let's say I'm ordering my lumber from 84 Lumber or Ganal or Champion Lumber. and let's say it's on a net 30 account, then you can have that contractor write a check for the vendor and the contractor. And what that means is, as a contractor, I have to go to that vendor and I have to get them to endorse that check, basically meaning that that vendor gets paid before I get paid. That's another layer of protection you can have as a consumer, as a homeowner, as an investor on your properties. To me, it's a little overkill. It's a pain in the butt to do. I will do it if it's, if it's a big project and it's a good deal. I've done it before. It's not a big, it's kind of a pain in the butt to go, I got to get an endorsement and they got to cash it and they got to give me the money. But if you want that, you can request that of the contractor. Say, hey, on the payment schedules, hey, I know you're buying your flooring from Floor & Decor. I know you're buying this from Lumber Liquidators. I know you're getting this from J&B Materials. I know you're getting this from ABC Supply. When this inspection passes or when you're owed money, I'll write you a check for ABC Supply and Green Tech Construction, and then you go to them. Now, like I said, because of bonds in place, I typically, if it's a small project, I sometimes pass on those if that's required, just because it's such a pain in the butt to do sometimes. But you can request subcontractors list too. So the other part of the contract is subcontractors list. You can find out what subcontractors they're using on the job if you want to. What their framers are, what their drywallers are, what their painters are. You can request that information and where they're buying their materials from. Hey, I want a vendor list. Floor & Decor, Ganal, ABC, wherever it is, you can request this of the contractor. Like I said, if it's a project or a long-term relationship with an investor and they want that in the beginning stages and they've got, numerous business in the future, we have no problem providing that. Sometimes it changes, it's not a fixed thing. Sometimes, hey, this guy is too busy, we got to hire someone else. He wasn't on the contractors list. You typically don't see it on smaller projects. It's usually on public works where they require a subcontractor list if you're the prime contractor, or a vendor list as well. But back to the contract. So the contract needs to state, the total amount, when payments are being made, the scope of work, and again, as detailed as possible, and exclusions and inclusions. So things that are not part of the contract, that are not included. If you're building a bathroom, okay, there's no niche, or we're not putting a shower door in, we're just doing the tiling, or we're just putting lights in. Make sure that you look at the not included section, because some contractors just put, hey, if it's not on there, we're not doing it. And you may have talked about it. Well, you told me you were going to put that light over there. You were going to do this. And, there's some bad contractors out there and they get that and they're saying, no, it's not in the contract. We're not doing it. So just make sure in their contract, they always have a not included section. Make sure that they have that in there, or that you look at it in there and that you make sure that there's nothing in there that was originally agreed upon before they signed the contract. So the last thing I want to talk about, because, we like to think every job there's not going to be an issue and there's not going to be problems, but things come about and disputes come about. But sometimes you don't have to worry about it. But do you guys, anyone know the lien policies for contractors, or how liens work and all that? Because that could really hurt your deal. Okay, so I'll go over it for Michelle or anyone else that's interested. And this is kind of the last section. I mean, like I said, no one's really asked any questions, but I'll open it up to questions. So a contractor, if they're the prime contractor on your house that you're rehabbing, the last day they work, or let's say you cut it off with them, they have 90 days to put a mechanic's lien on your house. So if it's 91 days and there's a dispute, they didn't lien the house, you're in luck. They cannot lien the house. And if they do, you can get it dismissed. You can get the lien released from the house. The subcontractors is a little different. So if they hire subcontractors and they don't put what's called a preliminary lien notice. A preliminary lien notice is not a lien. Some of my homeowners get scared because some of my subcontractors do it, some of my vendors do it. It's not a lien on the property. A preliminary lien notice is basically telling you, hey, we're doing work on your house. We have lien rights. If we don't get paid, of course, we will exercise our lien rights. So if a subcontractor, and I learned this the hard way when I was doing subcontracting work, if a subcontractor does not prelim the house, you have no lien rights. So, but if they do send a preliminary lien notice, then they have 90 days, I believe, to lien the property. It's either 90 or 60 for the subcontractors. Someone might be able to clarify that. But the last I looked, I believe subcontractors, if they pre-lien the property or if vendors pre-lien the contract, the house, they have 90 days. Now, this is probably something you don't have to worry about, but if a notice of completion is filed with the city or a notice of cessation, completion meaning the completion of the work, cessation meaning there's no one been on the property, then the contractor or subcontractor, if you filed a prelim, has 30 days. So if the work's completed and he's trying to dispute you and you file notice of completion and he decides after 30 days filing, no, you can get it released on the property, no problem. Now, after the lien is filed, just so you know, again, I'm not an attorney, so I don't want to say I'm an attorney, but this is just standard law with lien rights. Again, this is important stuff in case you get a dispute, you want to kick the contractor off your property, and you don't want to pay him, or you felt he didn't do the work right, or whatever it is. They have to, they file lien. After that lien is filed before 90 days, they then have to call what's called quote unquote perfect the lien. So perfecting the lien is filing a lawsuit. So after the lien is filed, they have 90 days to file a lawsuit to perfect the lien. If they do not file a lawsuit within 90 days, guess what? That lien can be dropped off the property and be released off the property. So those are some good things to know, like, hey, this slimy contractor I hired, he didn't pay these subcontractors. Well, then you ask yourself, okay, did they file a preliminary lien notice? No, they did not. Okay, well, you don't have to worry about them. They can't lien the property. I mean, they can lien it, but you can release it because they did not notify you with a 20-day preliminary lien notice that they were doing work on your property. If they don't perfect the lien after 90 days, go to the city, and you can release it. And in addition to releasing this, I found this out from my attorney, you can actually pursue the contractor for the legal fees required to remove it, because he didn't perfect the lien, left it on your property. So I know I've been yapping for 45 minutes, but I'd like to open the floor. Chris Fisher has a question. Did they file that before they start work? Yes, subcontractors have to file it before they start work. So if we hire a subcontractor to a job, some of our subcontractors will send preliminary lien notices. It has to be done before they start. And that's pretty standard California law. So, yes, so you do have to file if you're a prime, you don't have to file a prelim. But if you don't get paid and there's a dispute, then you do have the right as a contractor to file a lien on the property. So, yeah, I know it's late. I'm sure a lot of people are tired. Here's a question from Michelle. Question: what is the best source to check for any differences in these rules if you buy a property out of state of California? That's a really good question, Michelle. I would think at that point, you'd want to hire an attorney that works in that state, that specializes in contracting law. Like my attorney is a California attorney and she specializes she specializes in contracting law. That's all she does all day long. So, you know, our contracts are written, you know, making sure it abides by all the contracting laws. But yeah, probably finding an attorney, and I would almost like just, I mean, and again, this is just what I think would be the best avenue is just Google search construction attorney in Atlanta or construction attorney in Texas. And I'm sure you could find, and a lot of them, a lot of times we'll do a consultation with you on the phone for, you know, a consultation with you guys, and usually they don't charge you and they give you good information. Sharon, you got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. This was great. A lot of great information. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I know you.
Sure. Glad to be here.
I've seen you with my clients and walking the property, educating them,
Yeah.
and helping them to come back to reality and think of their projects in terms of phases instead of one, you know, big dream or whatever. But I had a question in kind of visualizing that property that we were on in Rialto, clients that you came out to. So with the ADU, we'll need a crane to bring the, well, I think they have a drive-through, but they wanted to do that fiberglass pool. And the contractor was saying that he would really work with somebody like you to do the contract work, the cement work, and then to share the crane. So if you have two different, say the ADUs and the pool sharing the crane, does that general liability insurance cover that? Especially since a couple of weeks ago, the crane fell on the house in LA.
Yeah, I've heard of that. So if their scope of work, so if I understand you correctly, the question is if they're using a crane on their project, and let's say the crane like damages my work.
Well, you're both working on the same property at the same time.
Right.
Okay, and say the ADU has to be lifted over the house and the pool has to be lifted over the house. So instead of two different operators of the crane is secured, they suggested that the homeowner gets the crane so that both contractors, the pool contractor and the general contractor, can use the same crane the same day, coordinated.
Yeah, you know, I have no problem with that. You know, if I want to coordinate with another contractor, like a pool contractor, and we have to both use a crane for the job requires a crane loaded materials or crane loaded, you know, crane loading in a certain area. Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I can't speak for other contractors, but I'm all about teamwork. So, you know, if it benefits us, it saves the client money.
Right. Would the general liability insurance cover that, or we would have to get one from both, like say you as a general contractor and the pool contractor?
It's a good question. So my general liability covers the scope of work I do. So if I use the crane for my specific job, right, and he's using the crane for him, and we're both sharing it,
right,
whether it's a third party crane or we're going to rent this crane, we're going to use it, both of us are going to use it, it would actually probably fall on both of our liabilities. Now, if I was using let's say he used the crane, nothing happened with him, and I used the crane, and let's say I turned it wrong and I hit the house and I break it, it wouldn't fall on his insurance, it would fall on mine. But in a situation like that, if you're both sharing it, it's 100% recommended that you get both their general liability insurance in case one of them, you know, because one of them may say, you know, if I was a homeowner and I was thinking these two guys are going to share the crane, just in case, you know, they're like, I didn't do it, I didn't touch that, and the other guy's like, well, I didn't touch it either. Well, I'm going to go after both your insurances then.
Exactly.
So, you know, on a situation like that, I would make sure, as if I was the consumer, I would make sure I'd have both their general liabilities, because knowing this industry and knowing people, no one wants to admit blame when something goes wrong.
Exactly.
So it's a tremendously good idea to have that.
Would that crane operator be a third party, or could it be a subcontractor for one of you?
It could be a subcontractor.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Like I know a backhoe company in Orange County, and they operate their own machines. So yeah, it's usually with that. I mean, I've operated heavy machinery before, but I typically like to have the people I work with companies that if I have to use that, they usually they rent it and they operate it too. So you just tell them what to do.
Okay.
And in that case, if that's the case, then liability falls on that third party company.
Right, because there's a whole harmless for you and both of the contractors if they're supplying the machine and the operator.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah. So depending on how that works,
California, everybody would be getting sued.
yeah, which I'm sure has happened before. So yeah, so I'm sure that's happened before. So yeah, just make sure you have the proper insurance. It's basically, hey, if my hands are on it, it's on me. If someone else's hands on it, it's on them. So even if it's not even like crane related, like let's say I'm working on building an ADU and the homeowner hires a pool contractor and that pool contractor breaks a hole in my ADU, I'm going after his insurance for the damages he caused.
Right.
So yeah, so it's always a good idea, whoever's on the job site, you know, doing work for you, whether it's a pool contractor, a general contractor, a plumbing contractor, that you have their insurance, especially if you're doing multiple projects at the same time. Make sure you have all their insurances, or you could be in heaps of trouble.
Exactly. All right. Thank you, Arthur.
Great question, by the way. That's a good one.
All right. Thank you. Enjoyed the presentation. Learned a lot. Thanks.
Thanks, Sharon. Yeah, I'm glad you're here and glad to work with you.
Arthur, Wayne, and then Joe.
Okay, Wayne.
Oh no, you guys were talking, and so I think you kind of covered it. I think when you have a crane operator operating a crane, he's insured, licensed, bonded, and everything. Can you imagine? They do air conditioners and lift pianos up 20 stories, floors, or whatever. And it just doesn't seem likely that crane operator should be specialized in what he does. A pool is different weight than an ADU, and just turn it the wrong way, the whole damn thing tip over. So they got to know what they're doing. And you just, because I was trying to figure out, well, what, you'll be operating the crane? I don't know, because different cranes can only hold certain amount, and they need to know all that. It's all like, I think they got to figure all that out before they lift the darn thing, because of the ton. So
yeah, that's why I always like, now with the business model, I always say like, hey, even though I may have a guy who knows how to do an run an excavator or run a skid steer, I would rather hire the guys that specialize in that.
Right.
You know?
Well,
so we don't run into a situation like Sharon mentions, you know, where
you would think so. For lifting something over the house, it'd be the same thing if you got the helicopter to lift it over the house.
Exactly.
All right, that's it.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Okay, so you got Joe and then Nick.
Okay, go ahead, Joe.
Oh yeah, I sent you a note. Anyway, I wanted to know if you work with any designers who specialize in flip projects to design all those details you were talking about, the colors, the baseboard size, the sink, all that stuff, but consistent with a flip budget, you know, not somebody who's going to design my dream house.
Yeah, if you want, Joe, I can recommend. I have a guy that does most of my plans, and he's a structural engineer, so he can do your calculations too. I have a plumber if you need plumbing isometrics, but he draws electrical plans, he stamps my plans. He does 3D drawings. So I'm very happy to resources on that. You know, even like, I know we're pretty busy right now, but like if you guys need like a plumber that I've used that's really good, I'm happy to recommend, you know, good plumbers or good electricians, you know. Like I said, I know very little about real estate, and I've learned so much from all you guys here, and I like to share the resources. So like, if you're just like, hey, Art, I got this electrical thing, I'll give you George's number. I'll give you John Amorosano. He does my plumbing. You know, I'll give you these guys' numbers. And yeah, so if you need an engineer, I'll type in my phone number in chat. And yeah, anyone that needs resources like that. Let me just put my phone number in here. Feel free to text me, and I'm happy to share planners, roofers, things like that, and you know, try to help people as best I can. So yeah, feel free to text me, and I'll shoot you Jeff's number. Jeff Schaefer. He's down in Long Beach. I don't know where you're at, but he drives anywhere. So
no, I was talking about a designer that figures out all the colors of the walls and the colors of the baseboards and the ceilings and all those deep, you know, what kind of tile matches.
An interior designer.
Yeah, interior designer.
Okay, I've got a few people I can shoot your way. Yeah,
okay.
I'll shoot some interior designers too. Yeah, cool.
Nick?
Nick?
Yes, Arthur. A question regarding liens. Is there such thing where you could, like, after a certain part of the portion of the project is done, you could have them sign a release of a lien or partial lien? Is there
I
something?
forgot to bring that up. That's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah, so we sometimes, if requested, you can request lien release from the vendors if you know where they're purchasing from. Like I can call Ganal on, like, let's say the project in Hemet, and I can get a lien release for Ryan, showing that I paid Ganal for the lumber we've ordered, or I can get a lien release for 84. As a contractor, I can give, so there's two type of waivers. There's a conditional waiver and an unconditional waiver. So a conditional waiver means that, hey, once we cash this check, we don't have lien rights anymore for that specific check. Unconditional waiver, which we can give at the end of a job if someone requests it, is basically saying, hey, you've paid me in full, I've gotten paid in full, and I am waiving all my lien rights because I got paid in full by you guys. So yeah, that's a good question. Unconditional waivers and conditional waivers. If you want that extra layer of protection, you can have a contractor on each progress payment give you conditional waivers and unconditional waivers for your project. So yeah, good question. Yeah, that's something that you can use, at least in the state of California. I don't know in other states, but at least in California you can.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, before we go any further, a couple of people came in late. I want to acknowledge them. So Nick, you never got a chance to introduce yourself, but go ahead and do that real quick.
Yes, I'm Nick. Just started flipping this year more heavily in the last couple months. And I started with Tom's group, my great group here, learned a lot. I missed the last month meeting, but I've been attending for the last few months. But yeah, we were able to do a deal, flip, a kind of more of a wholesale, which is we just bought a property, cash, put it back on the market the next day. Made about 50,000 within 2 weeks. So that was a good deal we just did last month. We now have like 2 other flips. But again, going back to someone had mentioned earlier, networking is very important. Coming to these groups, that's how I met my partner that we're working with right now through these meetups and these groups. And yeah, great way to, the more people you know, the better. So great group here.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Thomas.
You're welcome. Darren, you get a chance to speak. Mr. Elliott, talk to us.
Hey, everybody. My name is Darren. Glad to be here. I have one property currently in Palm Springs, and I'm looking to add to that. So right now I've just been saving and looking to network. I realized I was, scrolling around in Bigger Pockets, and one thing when I was reading one success story was the person who was really successful in a really short amount of time was somebody who was networking literally every day. He would convert his lunch into a networking session. He would meet with a different person every day. So I'm not there yet, but I am looking to open up with networking and just getting connected. I'm looking to partner up for my next deal, hopefully some sort of multifamily or even just a bigger deal that I can't take on myself. So good to be here. Glad to meet everybody.
Appreciate you, Darren. Stephanie, can you talk to me?
Oops. Hi, Thomas.
Hey,
Hi,
how
everyone.
you doing?
Doing well. Right now I'm doing property management for short-term rental. I'm arbitraging it, and I've kind of realized the, not downfalls, but the limitations when you can't really control the property in its entirety. So I'm going back into acquisition mode in August, looking for short-term rentals in Loma Linda, Redlands, and hopefully we'll just get the actual property itself. But doing the arbitrage has really helped me with the processes to make it much smoother. But you're right, just do it. There's no other real way to go about it.
Appreciate you, Stephanie. Mr. Kiefer, come on, talk to me.
I want to talk to you.
Don't
Hey, Ben
start.
Thomas.
What's going on, guy?
Haven't seen you for a while. I've been busy.
I know you have. Talk to the people real quick.
How's everybody doing? I'm David. I do loans in California. I haven't been doing many. I've been kind of quiet from it, doing my own investing and stuff, but still do loans, flips in California. So that's what I do.
Appreciate it. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I do appreciate you sticking and staying, even though the guest speaker wasn't able to show up tonight, we have him rescheduled for October the 20th. That'll be Jay Massey speaking in October. He was supposed to speak tonight, but unfortunately some things happened to where we had to reschedule. So for those who stayed or who left out early because someone's on the East Coast, I appreciate you supporting and whatnot. It's about the time for the end of the regular meeting. For those who want to stay after, you're more than welcome. You can speak to Ryan, you can speak to Art, or you can speak to anybody, whatever questions, or if you have a deal in process and you need it broken down to a microscience, feel free to throw it out there. As long as you have it under contract, please do not put it out there and then somebody finds out about it and then you're mad because they took it from you. Make sure if you're going to talk about it, it's under contract. So that way nobody can take it from you, because everybody's not always nice. You know what I'm saying? This is a very cutthroat business. So take it with a grain of salt. This is why we have these conversations, because people don't understand. This is a very compelling industry to get into. And if you're getting into it because of money, get out, run away, go the other way. Don't come back. Don't pass go and collect your $200, because this is not about money. This is about long-term. And it's not going to be something that you're going to get rich quick. This is a process. And the reason why it's a process, because there's so many different elements to this business, to this industry. You have note buying, you have holding, you have flipping, you have whatever. You got all different types of things that you can do in this industry to make money. But you got to understand what it is you're doing. First things first, understand what your why is. Why you want to do this? Why did you get up this morning? Why did you brush your teeth? Why did you put the clothes on? Why you drive the car? Once you understand your why, the rest of it should be easy. Now, all you doing is inundating yourself with this type of community, with people, like-minded people like yourself that are interested in the same things. And they tell you their stories. They tell you their triumphs. They tell you their fallbacks. So this way you can learn from those and you can move forward without any more hurdles. Because if you do a trial and error on your own, guess what? You're going to run into a lot of hurdles. And once you run into those hurdles, you're going to get frustrated. And when you get frustrated, you're going to quit. That's why you need to be in these communities to encourage you. This is not a feel-good story. We're not going to be doing no shaking and dancing, no twerking, nothing like that. These are real, true, live, hard-fought stories. These are compelling stories that people had to deal with and had the courage, and not only the courage to drive, not to quit, but to succeed. You know, you already heard, what's the name of the story about Tennessee? Alex's story. Alex just took a gamble and said, you know what? I'm going to dribble and shoot. Let me see if I hit the basket. You got to practice. Practice makes perfect. You know what I'm saying? So please, whatever you do, don't just quit. Just keep driving, keep driving, keep driving. If you ever feel like you coming down or you feel like you're going to lose it, contact your fellow man and let them know, hey, I got this deal here. I'm not sure how to structure it. And let's see if we can structure it together. So that way you can get the deal. I don't want your deal. I want your brain. I don't need your money. I want your brain. Because the more I get your brain, the more indebted you're going to be to where you can overcome. And then you can pass it along to somebody else. That's all we're doing, just passing this information on that we learned. We all started in the same boat, wholesaling, didn't have no education, didn't have any money, and we made it. And we still learning. Just because we made a little bit don't mean that we actually, there's no such thing as a guru. There isn't. Because if that's the case, then hell, none of us be doing it, because one person is not going to tell you how he got there. He's going to make you pay for it. This is all free. And we all here for each other. So this is the time to break it down. Those who want to stay, let's philosophize. Let's go.
Hey, Thomas, I have something for you.
Go for it.
I don't know. Did anybody pay attention what Wells Fargo did a week ago on July 9th?
I didn't, so you tell me.
Wells Fargo tells customers it will shutter all personal lines of credit. Welcome to the beginning of the crash. Same thing happened when 2008 when the HELOCs got locked. Same thing. I guarantee it's going to go across the board. We're going to start shutting down lines of credit. Nick, you said you heard it. Yeah, it got my ears perked.
Yeah, that happened to mine. My wife and I, we both had a line of credit. Something small, nothing big.
They shut it down, right?
Yeah, they shut it down. It just
one of my buddies had a credit card. I don't even think they had money on it. It was, paid. They paid it off. It was shut down.
But that's only with lines of credit. That's not home HELOCs.
Not yet.
Correct?
No, not HELOCs. Yeah.
But this is what happened when the first crash happened. When in 2008 they shut down HELOCs. That was the beginning of the iceberg.
Right.
So where it could start shutting down markets of maybe not real estate, but if money starts getting tight again, it will affect real estate, as we all know.
I disagree that this is the beginning of the end. I think that Wells Fargo is in financial trouble, and that's why they're doing it.
Well,
I don't think this is a systematic issue. What other signs are you seeing that would point you into the direction of that there's a crash coming?
Well, my question would be, to piggyback on what Ryan is asking you, what are the criteria that they're looking at to decide on whether or not they're going to shut down someone's line of credit?
No, it's not individually. They're just shutting it down.
Yeah,
everything across the board.
Program.
Everything across the board. I mean, they're shutting down. It looks like they're shutting down credit cards. I think they're going to start. It looks like they may. If they're looking at that, they're going to look at probably shutting down lines of credit on your home, things like that, because. And Wells Fargo being one of the top 4 banks, that's a little frightening, because when one of them starts doing it, you may see a lot of them because there may be bad credit out there. A year and a half of people not paying, how much money have they lost? They're not going to get it back. If you go by what's his name? God, I can't remember his name. Was saying. We're looking at bankruptcies of 2 or 3 years backlogged already.
So when they say shut down lines of credit, does that mean that the credit doesn't exist anymore?
It means like if you had like a credit card, like I said, my buddy had, it was in good standing. It no longer exists. They can't use it.
What about that has indebtedness?
That what?
That you owe on?
They'll probably shut it off where you can't use it anymore and you have to pay it off.
You just have to pay it back.
Oh.
Just have to pay it back.
Okay.
They're closing down their personal lines of credit because they're not going to offer that anymore.
Which is interesting because that's one of their main money makers. I mean, they 18% on those credit cards, or up to 24%. So why are they shutting down one of their biggest money makers?
Yeah, because it could be a losing proposition for them right now.
A losing proposition at 24%. Jesus Christ. You know what I'm saying?
Credit
I'm gonna say that right now.
Rates are extremely high, and with what happened with COVID, I could understand why they're losing money with that kind of a product. But when it comes to home lending, I just don't see that there's any other signs out there that the economy is starting to kind of go in a bad direction from a real estate standpoint. There's nothing. We still have over demand, plenty of demand. We have a lack of housing. We have a lack of supply. Builders are nowhere close to being in even close to keeping up with demand. The price to build, the only thing that they're building are high-end houses, nothing for the first-time buyer. So,
but all those issues that you just said, I hate to say this, was exactly what we're dealing with. We've never had a good supply of housing, ever. We've been behind housing for over 2 decades.
True.
So in California, we made a crash may not happen, but may see it in other markets, slower markets. Something will slow down.
I agree.
In California, we're a different beast just because, it seems like everybody wants to live here, but we're going to start seeing things like I'm hearing out of San Francisco. You may, they're still selling homes, but there's a lot of people leaving San Francisco. So eventually they're going to have more homes than people wanted to buy in there. You know what I mean? Because there was a point where the peninsula up there, you couldn't find a U-Haul.
Right.
So,
yeah, but a crash is precipitated by a downturn like that requires a glut of foreclosures.
Right.
And where are those foreclosures happening?
Well, you won't see foreclosures because they still have on the books that they can write it off as good debt.
So it sounds like
But you have to have a glut of foreclosures to have the availability and to have that kind of a market crash. And there is no politician that is going to allow a wave of foreclosures going on. They're going to do everything that they can to make sure